So in addition to being able to create the table and populate the table with data and have a look at that data, we're also going to want to know how to work with fine grained information as well and kind of manipulate the data in our tables. So we've seen the insert statement already. Uh, and the insert statement is part of a group of queries we kind of collectively refer to as action queries. And action queries basically have a permanent effect on your data. That means that when we add records, they're permanently there. When we make changes to them using the update statement, the changes are permanent. And the same thing with delete. Once we delete them, they're gone for good. So let's just have a quick look at each of these statements. The insert statement is the C in your CRUD operation, which means that it creates data for you, or at least creates records. Usually you have some source for that data, but we're creating the data inside of the database itself. And in short, it just adds a new record or row to a table. We can insert multiple at the same time. We can insert one at a time. We're just going to focus on the one at a time right now. So an insert statement looks like so: insert into, and then we'll use the table name that we're inserting into. In this case, it's game. Then there's actually two syntax. One syntax, we can omit the list of fields that we want to insert, and we can just skip right over and say, I have some values for you, here they are, and provide a list of values. Now, if we're going to use this syntax, I don't suggest using this syntax, I don't, but we will have to provide a value for each field in our database in order. So we'd want to have a look at our columns here, and we have a game ID that takes an integer. There's going to be a problem with using that game ID, but for now let's just choose an arbitrary value. I'm going to put in 200. For game name, I'm going to use the name of an obscure game that I won't tell you too much about, but let's just say it's not that great and I made it. Okay. For genre, I'm going to put in adventure. I'm going to put it in all caps. There's a good reason for this. We'll look at that later. And there's also a release date. It was released last month on the 24th. And is it PvP? No. Is it downloaded? Meaning, can it be downloaded? Yes. And game fee, there was no cost for it. It was a very bad game. And rating is a 1 out of 10, and that's being generous. Okay, so if I try to run this query right now, this is a well-formed query, but we do have one problem with it, and that is that this ID column we've set as an identity specification, which means the database is supposed to be deciding what the ID is. So what would happen if I tried to execute that is I get an error. It says an explicit value for the identity column can only be specified when a column list is used and identity insert is on. Now, we don't know what identity insert is, and we don't know how to manipulate it, and frankly, we don't really want to. If we have an identity column, we really should be leaving it up to the database to handle. However, there are some times when we use refresh scripts and we want to make sure we have the right ID, and those refresh scripts will do that. If you see it, it's not for you to do too. Okay? This doesn't work. That said, when you have an identity column, this insert statement can be modified such that you don't enter the ID, and it will know to skip over the ID and match up your columns with the other column names. So game name will end up being the first one, then genre, release date, whether it's PvP, whether it can be downloaded, the fee, and the rating. Okay, so this will work. If I hit execute right now, I get one row affected. All right, now let's have a look at our table just so we can see that it worked. Select star from game. That means we're just going to show everything in the game table. And you can see we now have a new record at the bottom, Gem Hunter number 18. Okay, so you may notice that, whoops, Gem Hunter has an invalid genre there, or at least it's valid, but it doesn't follow the format of the rest, and we may want it to. So let's try to insert that record again correctly. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we can rewrite our game insert the same way, but I think this time I'm just going to show you the other format that we use. Let's suppose that we didn't know whether the game was PvP. So here are the details we know. We know that it's Gem Hunter. It's downloadable. We don't know its rating, and it's an adventure. And it was released on 2017-08-24. Okay, so that would be August 24th. All right. How do we enter just the details that were given? And when you're given details, that's what your inserts should do. They should only insert data that is provided. And the reason for that is because there are defaults and other triggers that happen on databases we're going to get into later on in the term that affect the data when you don't enter it. And if you're not given information, then we should allow the database to have its defaults. So what do we have? We have the game name, that's Gem Hunter. We have whether it's downloadable, so game is downloaded. We have its genre, so let's put that in there, and its release date. Okay. So now you notice that instead of jumping right into that values keyword, I've kind of wedged this list of columns that I have available in between. So what I've said is I'm going to give you some values, and they're going to be exactly for these fields. So now I can put values here, and it doesn't have to be on the next line, by the way. That applies to all statements. We can put it all on one line, or we can put it on multiple lines, but putting it on the next line does make it a little more readable. And our values also takes a set of brackets, just like before. Only now we're not providing all the values, we're only providing the values that we had available to us. So we have game name. Oh, we don't put in the columns here. That was a bit of a mistake. Okay, so game name we would put in Gem Hunter. And we would say, is it downloadable? Yes or no. It's a bit field, so it takes a 0 or a 1. We can put in 1 for it's downloadable. Okay, and you'll notice that this first parameter matches up with this first parameter in the column list, and the second one matches up with the second one, and we continue that trend. So it's not about what order our columns are anymore, but what order the column list that we provided is. Okay, so for genre, we're going to put in adventure again. And for the release date, we'll put in what was provided to us, 24. Now, just for the record, if it says it was released on August 24th, 2017, I still want you to use this YMD format, okay? It will guarantee that it always works. So if I run that, now it says one row affected, and I'm going to select everything from game again. And if you have a look, I now have 2 records for Gem Hunter.